Okay, so in chapter 11, we begin to talk about our fine motor skills. And remember, I introduced this concept earlier. So fine motor skills are your small movements with small muscles. Okay, so they have to be very precise and most accurate. And your gross motor skills are used with your bigger muscle groups, and they don't have to be as accurate to be successful. So if you were to look at some examples, so texting would be a fine motor skill. So using the fingers are smaller joints, smaller muscles. You have to be more precise to get to the tiny buttons and make sure you send the message that you intended and not something crazy, right? And then, playing an instrument like the piano or the guitar is more fine motor. Anything that's involving the fingers is really going to be a fine motor skill. Anything involving the lips, the tongue, so speech and language is a fine motor skill. The toes to some extent. So with kicking, most of the force comes from the movement of the hip and knee, which is gross motor. But there's this small part where the toes of the foot direct the ball and aim the ball. And that part of it, the use of the toes to aim the ball, is the fine motor component of that skill. So some skills can have both a fine and gross motor component. So another example would be pitching, right? Most of the force is coming from the shoulder and the rotation of the hips. And so that part of it is gross motor, right? Those are large muscle groups and large actions, and they have a little bit more room for error, right? So using the trunk and the shoulder, the elbow, large muscle groups, that's a gross motor component. That very small, fine movement of the fingers to change the type of pitch, so whether it's a fast pitch or a curve ball, those changes with the fingers is a fine motor component. Okay, so some skills that we do can have both. And so when you're doing your quizzes or assignments or exams, just make sure you can explain why something is a fine or a gross motor skill. So fine motor, small muscle groups, very precise movement. Gross motor, larger muscle groups, not as precise. So when we manipulate objects, there are several different terms for describing that movement. So anything that is within the hand, so movement just unique to the hand, the muscles of the hand are all that's moving, is an intrinsic movement. So it usually is something that's already in the hand, a smaller object. So like writing, which if you're just using your fingers to move the pencil or the marker, then that would be an intrinsic movement. Now, when you decide, to fold that note up into a paper airplane and throw it across the room, now we're starting to use the muscles of the rest of the arm, the elbow and the shoulder. So now it becomes an extrinsic movement. So intrinsic inside, intrinsic inside the hand, and extrinsic external outside the hand. And then there's three more terms, just depending on how the fingers and thumb move together. So if all the fingers and the thumb are moving in the same manner, so either flexion or extension, flexion is moving towards the palm and extension moving away from the palm, and all of them are moving the same way, then that is a simple synergy, right? Simple means they're doing the same, simple. A reciprocal synergy is when the fingers and the thumb are doing something different. So all the fingers may be moving in the same way, but the thumb is moving in the opposite way. So maybe something like twiddling your thumb. And then sequential movement is moving the fingers in some kind of a pattern or order of events. So like playing Guitar Hero, right? This kid's rocking out, and based on the notes, then he moves his fingers in a certain order.